Before the Ottoman Empire. Before the Mongols rebuilt. Before the medieval world had time to breathe, there was one man. Every king on earth was afraid of his name. He stacked the skulls of entire cities outside their own walls. Not in rage. In cold deliberate calculation, because the next city needed to see what refusing him looked like. He started with 12 men raiding sheep. He died commanding the largest army in the world. Men like this only make sense in retrospect. He walked with a permanent limp his whole life. His enemies called him Timur the Lame. Every single one of them was wrong. Most did not live long enough to revise that opinion. He captured the Sultan who had never lost a battle. Used him as a footstool to mount his horse. Kept him in captivity until he died of shame. Between every campaign he came home and built the most beautiful city in the medieval world, using the architects of every civilization he had just destroyed. Both things are true. Neither cancels the other. His tomb reads, "Were I alive, the world would tremble." A Soviet archaeologist opened it in 1941. 3 days later Germany invaded the Soviet Union. Whether you believe in curses, the timing is the timing. This is the story of the most dangerous man of the medieval world, who burned civilizations and built cathedrals from the ashes, who died at 68 planning one more war. The steppe produces men who understand the world will not accommodate weakness. Tamerlane was born here in 1336 into a minor noble family. The land shaped everything that followed. 12 men. He raided, fought, sold his sword to anyone who would pay, studying every army from the inside. Their commanders. Their gaps. The mistakes men always make under pressure. The wound came on a raid. An arrow found his right leg and never truly left. His enemies called him Timur the Lame, right up until they stopped being able to call him anything. The chronicler on what separates Tamerlane from every conqueror of his era.
Tamerlane never lost a major battle in 40 years of warfare across 3 continents. That makes Alexander the Great look inconsistent. The horror of the skull pyramids was real. The genius underneath was equally real. You cannot understand him if you only look at one.
By 1370 the most important city on the Silk Road was his. He made it his capital, and began building it into something magnificent while destroying every city that refused him. Every campaign was designed before a single soldier moved. His genius looked like instinct because the preparation was invisible. He had already fought the battle on paper before the armies ever met. The skull pyramids were never about cruelty. They were about efficiency. He turned horror into a diplomatic instrument. The pyramid negotiated so his army did not have to. Those ambassadors argued for surrender more convincingly than any general could. He had turned his enemies into his own advance team. Every pyramid was also a negotiation. The chronicler on the psychology behind the skull pyramids.
After Isfahan, Tamerlane barely needed his army in Persia. The reputation did the work. A city that surrendered was spared. A city that resisted was destroyed and its skulls displayed. Horror used precisely is more efficient than prolonged warfare.
He played chess obsessively, studying the board the same way he studied every campaign, searching for the move his opponent had not yet seen. The same mind. Every time. In 1381 the machine turned west. Persia. Every city received the same offer: surrender and pay tribute, or resist and face what came after. Most surrendered. Isfahan did not. Isfahan, 200,000 people, libraries, universities, markets across 3 continents. Its citizens killed Tamerlane's tax collectors after initially surrendering. That decision echoed across the next 3 days in ways nobody inside those walls had anticipated. When the news reached him, his face did not change. No rage. Just a man reaching for a policy already written. He gave the order quietly. His army knew exactly what the quiet voice meant. His army moved through Isfahan like a program running. Each unit had a number to fill. 3 days. The pyramid at the main gate contained 70,000 skulls, stacked in precise rows. 70,000. A number so large it stops being human and becomes architecture. He needed the next city to see a structure, not a tragedy. Architecture communicates. Tragedy invites sympathy. The chronicler on what Isfahan accomplished far beyond its own walls.
Isfahan broke Persian resistance across the entire region. The next major city sent its keys before his advance guard arrived. The massacre was the last of that scale he needed in Persia. Horror deployed precisely is more efficient than years of warfare.
After Isfahan, governors rode out to meet him in open fields, kneeling with their city keys before his army arrived. Tamerlane accepted the tribute with perfect courtesy and moved on. Cities that submitted were not burned. They paid and returned to their lives. Destruction was the consequence of defiance. Remove defiance and the machine had no reason to run. Every city he destroyed he stripped of its finest minds, architects, scholars, craftsmen, poets, and brought them to Samarkand. The city grew more magnificent with every campaign he conducted. The chronicler on the central contradiction that defines Tamerlane completely.
He was a Muslim who massacred Muslims, a patron of art who destroyed libraries, a man who built the most beautiful city in Asia with architects whose cities he had burned. He contains both things completely. Neither cancels the other.
In 1391 the machine turned north toward Tokhtamysh, the Khan who owed Tamerlane his throne and repaid him by invading his territory twice. Some lessons only arrive at the point of a sword. Tokhtamysh made 3 mistakes. He bit the hand that placed him on his throne. He underestimated the speed Tamerlane could cross a continent. And he chose open battle instead of the steppe. Tamerlane hit the Golden Horde from 3 directions at once. Tokhtamysh believed he was fighting a frontal engagement. He was standing in the center of a trap that had been closing for 3 days. The chronicler on the tactical signature Tamerlane used across 40 years of warfare.
He never attacked where his enemy was strongest. He maneuvered until attacking their weakest point was also where they least expected it. The double envelopment at Kandurcha, the feigned retreat at Delhi, the political dismantling at Ankara, the same mind, same calculation every time.
Tokhtamysh fled. His army evaporated. 3 years later he invaded again. Tamerlane came back north. This time there was no turning south before the job was finished permanently. The Turk River lasted less than an hour. The Golden Horde as a military power ended that afternoon. Then Tamerlane kept going, burning Serai, burning the Volga trading cities. When Serai burned, the Golden Horde lost its infrastructure of authority. The Russian princes who had paid tribute for 150 years watched the smoke and began thinking differently. He was punishing a disloyal vassal. The vacuum he left allowed Moscow to consolidate the Russian principalities within a generation. He accidentally reorganized northern Eurasia on the way home from a grudge. In 1398 the machine turned south, toward the Delhi Sultanate, the richest state in Asia. His advisors warned him. Indian armies used war elephants his horses had never faced. Tamerlane solved it on the march. Water buffaloes. Collected across the region, loaded with oil-soaked straw. When the Indian elephants charged, light the buffaloes, drive them forward. A burning, screaming buffalo does something very specific to an armored war elephant. The preparation took 1 day. His army had never done this before. He gave them one day to practice the impossible, then walked them into the most creative battle of his career. The chronicler on why the Battle of Delhi is still studied in military academies today.
He faced 120 war elephants armored in chainmail with poison on their tusks. He dug a trench to slow their charge, positioned caltrops to injure their feet, then launched the burning buffalo attack. He turned their greatest weapon into their greatest liability.
They came. 120 armored elephants shaking the earth. Tamerlane's horses were already breaking from the smell and the noise. He had designed something for exactly that moment. The signal came. The buffaloes were lit. They charged screaming into the elephant line. The first elephant turned. The one beside it turned. 90 seconds later it was irreversible. 120 armored war elephants through your own infantry is not a setback. It is an extinction event. The Delhi Sultanat's army ceased to function in 2 hours. He entered Delhi on December 18, 1398. He ordered it spared. His army looted it anyway. He executed the looters, then walked into the treasury and took everything that interested him personally. He left with the treasury, the finest mines in Delhi, and the war elephants, the same ones that had stampeded through their own army, walking peacefully behind him towards Samarkand. Bayezid I, the Thunderbolt, crushed a European crusade at Nicopolis, blockaded Constantinople for years, never lost a battle. He and Tamerlane exchanged insults by letter for 3 years. Then both men ran out of words. Before a soldier crossed the border, Tamerlane had spent months writing to Anatolian princes Bayezid had conquered, offering their kingdoms back if they changed sides at the right moment. The battle was half won before it started. The conspiracy was in place before the armies met. Several Anatolian contingents inside Bayezid's force were already committed to switching sides. Tamerlane had prepared the betrayal that would decide the battle before the battle began. The chronicler on what made Ankara different from every other battle Tamerlane ever fought.
At Ankara, the military genius and the political genius operated simultaneously at their highest level. The military plan and the political conspiracy were one operation. By the time the armies met, the battle was already decided. He had never done anything more complete.
July 20, 1402. Outside Ankara, the 2 largest armies in the medieval world across a summer plain. Bayezid had never seen a force this size. Tamerlane had never faced an opponent this capable. Neither showed it. Both flanks hit at once. The Ottoman right began to give. And then, precisely when Tamerlane had arranged it, the Anatolian contingents in the center turned their weapons around and faced their own army. Tens of thousands of men reversed direction in the middle of the battle. The Ottoman army did not lose Ankara, it came apart from the inside. Bayezid's flanks and center were gone simultaneously. Bayezid fought even when there was nothing left to fight with. He pulled his janissaries into a square and held it for hours after the outcome was certain. He was captured as the sun went down. Tamerlane received him with courtesy, offered food, had his wounds tended. They reportedly played chess, then used him as a footstool when mounting his horse. Bayezid died in captivity 8 months later. That image spread across the medieval world faster than any army could march, telling every king still watching exactly what the calculus of refusing Tamerlane produced. The message required no translation. Constantinople got 51 more years. Without Ankara it might have fallen in 1402. Those 51 years allowed scholars fleeing Constantinople to carry Greek texts into the Italian Renaissance. Tamerlane made that possible without intending to. Between every campaign he came home and built the Registan, the Bibi Khanim Mosque. He supervised personally argued with architects, demanded everything bigger. A civilization assembled from the pieces of those he had broken. The Bibi-Khanim Mosque was so vast its acoustics were catastrophic. He did not care. It was the largest mosque in the world. Both things, this and the skull pyramids, are equally true. Ibn Khaldun spent 35 days in Tamerlane's camp. He later wrote that Tamerlane was one of the most remarkable men he had ever met. Then Tamerlane burned the city Ibn Khaldun had just surrendered. He burned Damascus after the most intellectually stimulating conversation of the campaign. He burned Baghdad the same year, for the second time in history. The machine ran the same program regardless of what happened in the tent. He never stopped. The limp worsened. The arthritis spread. His doctors believed each campaign would kill him. He outlasted their predictions year after year, because the will simply had no setting for stopping. In 1404 he was 68 years old, arthritic, assembling the largest army of his career. The target was China. The Ming dynasty had written him letters of insufficient respect. He began the preparations. His doctors laid out the case. He was 68. The winter crossing would be lethal. He listened carefully. He thanked them for their counsel. He crossed the river in January anyway. He crossed the Syr Doria in January 1405. His hands shook by then. The fever had been building for weeks. At Otrar his body finally delivered the verdict his doctors had promised. He died at Otrar on February 18, 1405. The invasion of China died with him. A January river crossing and a fever saved a civilization from the most dangerous army in the world. The chronicler on what Tamerlane's death at Otrar meant for the shape of the world.
China survived because a 68-year-old man got a fever crossing a river in January. His death at Otrar is one of history's great hinge moments. The Timurid dynasty survived. The Mughal Empire followed a century later. History is sometimes that fragile.
He is buried under a slab of dark jade, the largest piece of jade in the world. The inscription reads, "Were I alive, the world would tremble." Nobody who studied his record has ever seriously disputed it. A Soviet archaeologist opened the tomb on June 19, 1941. The healed leg wound was confirmed, the limp was real. 3 days later Germany invaded the Soviet Union. The remains were reburied in November 1942. The same month the tide turned at Stalingrad. Whether you believe in curses or not, the timing is the timing. Tamerlane spent his life in the space between fact and legend. His tomb continues the tradition. The chronicler with the final verdict on the man history cannot simplify.
17 million dead, perhaps 5% of the world's population. The most destructive medieval conqueror by any measure. Also the builder of Samarkand. Also the man who saved Byzantium 50 years. Every simple verdict about him is wrong. He was too large for simple verdicts.
Samarkand still stands. 6 centuries after he built it with stolen hands and looted gold, UNESCO World Heritage. The skull pyramids are gone. The things he built remain. He understood which of his works would last longest. Uzbekistan put him on the currency and in the central square. The man who built 17 million dead into his empire is now a founding father. History decides what it needs from its monsters. The Silk Road ran through Samarkand. He taxed it, protected it, occasionally burned cities on it when they refused him. Guardian and most dangerous threat. Simultaneously. For 35 years. Always simultaneously. His great-great-grandson Babur founded the Mughal Empire in India in 1526. The vacuum Tamerlane tore open in Delhi in 1398 was still there 128 years later. He was still shaping India from the grave. Every city he destroyed rebuilt itself. Baghdad, Damascus, Delhi, Isfahan. They all survived him. The skull pyramids rotted. The cities grew back. He burned them and they endured. That is also part of the record. He built the most beautiful city in the medieval world and stacked 70,000 skulls outside one of the greatest cities in Persia. Both things were done by the same hands, in service of the same certainty. He came from this steppe, from 12 men and a wound that never healed. Everything he became grew from this unforgiving landscape. It produced exactly the kind of man it was designed to produce. He is still there, in the jade-covered tomb in the city he built from the ruins of every civilization he destroyed. He would not have seen any contradiction in that. He never saw contradictions. He saw outcomes. He started with 12 men raiding sheep. He ended with 17 million dead and the most beautiful city in the medieval world. He never lost a battle that mattered. He died planning one more war. The cold killed him. He would have found that deeply embarrassing. Like and subscribe to Empires Untold.